Hey folks, and welcome to another Don't Cry Wolf video blog. As always, I would love to have your feedback, so please do leave your comments in the comment section below. If you do like what you're seeing, then by all means give this a thumbs up. If you have a personal vendetta against me, then by all means give this a thumbs down. So today what I'd like to talk about is brand authenticity, and in particular looking at how brands can work with their tone of voice and with the way that they approach their communications in a way that will increase their authenticity and actually improve the sort of conversation and the sentiment that they get back from their audience. So an authentic disclaimer before we start. I'm usually in my shirt and tie and my waistcoat in front of the camera. I'm sorry to disappoint those watching my videos purely for the fashion tips and for the inspiration, but some of you may know I'm a father to a toddler and a little baby, and they decided that last night was a night that we would definitely not sleep. So I thought, sod the time, waistcoat, I'm wearing trousers, that's enough. Now back to the topic. I've worked with brands from the likes of Virgin, who invested an awful amount into their identity, into their tone of voice, into sort of personalising the way they talk, through to some high street banks where having too much personality can actually be a bit of a problem for them. So what I thought I'd do was share my top 4 tips for helping a brand become more authentic. Okay, so my first tip here is you need to understand who you actually are. And not only that, you need to live by it. Something that always gets my arse twitching with rage is when I see a traditional high street bank that has a corporate reputation to uphold over the past 400 years throwing some poor unsuspecting banker on stage in a hoodie to talk about why they're just like a startup. Yes, whilst they all might applaud themselves and give themselves a nice big pat on the back because they successfully launched yet another tech accelerator, they have to be aware that if you put that much money on the table, people are probably going to enter that competition. It's not because they suddenly believe that you've gone from having a vested interest in mortgage fluctuations to a vested interest in HTML5. So being true to who you are is actually a really crucial part to building up some authenticity. My second tip is to be vulnerable. Now I know this sounds absolutely bonkers from a crisis communications perspective, but actually being vulnerable is one of the key principles to forming trust. We've seen some vulnerability in the recent weeks. KFC's advert acknowledging the fact that they did cock up, that's a pun as well, felt wholesome, it felt true, it felt like they were not trying to sugarcoat anything. They ran out of chicken. A chicken shop ran out of chicken. Equally, and perhaps more contentiously, Jamie Carragher has obviously been dragged over the coals. Rightly so. It's not every day that you see a high-profile, middle-aged sportsman spit a shower of spit into the face of a 14-year-old girl. But equally, from a comms perspective, he's handled it quite well. For anyone who wants a detailed look at how he handled it in a professional manner, then I suggest you take a look at Andy Barr's video blog, where he goes into some depth around the key principles that Jamie Carragher adopted in order to come out of this not so bad. Both of those examples showed humility, showed vulnerability, acknowledged the fact that not everyone's perfect, and especially not brands when they're communicating to mass audiences. So for my third tip, I'm going to steal a quote from the fantastic movie Fight Club, which is this: sticking feathers up your arse does not make you a chicken. I've seen way too many brand refreshes fail because they haven't thought about the way they're communicating. They've thought about their colour palette, and they've thought about their new logo, and they've thought about applying the new gradients and the fantastic new area for video blogging. But they haven't thought about whether any of that stuff is actually reflected in the way they actually communicate. From the experience when a customer picks up the phone and speaks to one of the sales representatives, through to actually refreshing the content calendar. Way too many brands stick a very expensive lick of paint on top of their brand and hope for the best. Start from the comms perspective, understand how you want to change the way you want to communicate and the messages that you want to take to market, and then you can start building a wrapper around that. Okay, so the final tip is having unshakable principles. When shit really hits the fan for a brand, and it will, you have to come back to core principles. My business's core principles are a complete dedication to honesty, always having a sense of humour, and ending out net positive to the local environment and the community. Whatever happens to Don't Cry Wolf, I have to fall back on those. If I don't, I've single-handedly dismantled the brand. God, I hope no one watches these things. Defining those core principles will be absolutely invaluable when you find yourself asking, how do we respond? What should we say? How would we approach this creative campaign? How would we approach this crisis communication situation? And make those principles as human as they can be. So by that I don't mean innovate the fintech world with a new cloud algorithm. That's not a core principle. That's word wang. So there we have it. Those are my tips for building up a more authentic brand. I'd love to hear what you think. How would you go about building up an authentic and trustworthy brand, and what would you tweak in your brand's communications to achieve that? As always, please do leave the comments below. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.